Okay, I guess. Hi, everyone. It's really cool to see some old friends join the chats. I'll just begin reading because you probably know I'm very shy. Okay. So the first series of poems I'll be reading is a triptych. I recently wrote them as my trace at Swatch. Yeah, so I'll just begin with that. The first is called The Father. I met your father this afternoon, and he greeted me with the kind of warmth only the poor seem to know. He said while the two of you were in New York City, he wondered if he'd done enough with his life. And I bent to adjust my shoelaces. I was picturing myself in the act of Mondi. I could see us all seated around a wooden table with bowls filled with beetroot soup. At that moment, I understood how, with only 2 years of practice, you wore your gift like skin, moved through the world unharmed by silence, and from a distance it appeared as though you could live without compliment. Your father's love was as steady as earth, as returning as grain. He was a man who would work with his hands. Your father told us how the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, caught between Russian and Polish rule, became a protectorate of the Vatican, but held fast to its Orthodox rituals. He told us about a coded hand gesture, a symbol of the cross, with 3 fingers lifted as a sign of the Trinity, and 2 folded to the palm to honor Christ as both flesh and God. I ruminated on this way of knowing, this path of repair, this unornamented gesture. How once, on a walk through the woods, you explained to me that this sign meant that the Church of Ukraine only recognized the Father and Son, but not the Holy Spirit. I couldn't fathom what body could form without breath, and you turned to me, puzzled that I could believe in something so intangible. I tried not to let it show, but for an instant, I became afraid of you. There is something unkind about beauty that refuses God. When you would try to explain your process, my mind would drift like smoke. For a moment, I thought I had created wrong, that my work relied too often on impulse, on urgency, lacked the spine of high concept. I felt dwarfed by the mountain of your productivity, your secular way of making art. But did you know, before the Lord declared the light, the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering above the waters. The next is called The Sun. But before I continue, I just want to know if you guys can hear me. Can someone just confirm?
Perfectly, perfectly.
Okay, all
Beautiful.
right, good.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, The Sun. Your son never greets me. Have you noticed? Do you caution him at home when I'm gone? I ask myself crossing the river, on my way home from your house, how much of it is his fault? How much of it is yours? I think of this as the wheel turns, your hands coaxing the clay into something phallic, your hands coaxing the clay into something phallic, then pressing gently at its crown, hollowing it into a vessel. You tell me that clay carries its own will, holds memory in its body, that pressed against its intended form, it may yield where it once broke. And I wonder if you see it, your art and mine. Why I relinquished my power to men, you asked, because we sometimes fold to that primary wound. I reasoned to myself against your quiet dismissal, the way I have submitted to your art and to your son. If it were God in front of me, this supplication would be good. I on my knees, the 2 of you above me. The Spirit. For a moment, while you were working, I thought of you, the true person of no rank, hunched over the wheel, the folds of your stomach shaped like the belly of your vase, So I sent you a photograph of a Black woman lying naked on a bed, her weight pressing into the mattress, her flesh rippling over itself. I wanted to show you how, without knowing it, you'd given your vase the shape of my mother, the way she might appear when she's alone. But it was not what you were making, you explained with a look of disapproval. And I sighed, because I thought you knew that in my watching, I was making something too. Do you resist this? My eye on your craft, my impulse to change things, just when you were sure I understood. I liked it when you described to me the feeling of terracotta in your hands, how easily it yields, smooth to the touch, retaining its color and texture. I suppose we all like it when, at the end of our labor, we create what we'd intended. A potter makes a pot, a woman births a child, a poet hovers just above shame and below her function. To write, that is all you said. You do your part, and I'll do mine. I was wondering if I could read this one more time because I was a little distracted. Um, I'll just start again. The Spirit. For a moment while you were working, I thought I saw you, the true person of no rank, hunched over the wheel, the folds of your stomach shaped like the belly of your vase. So I sent you a photograph of a Black woman, lying naked on a bed, her weight pressing into the mattress, her flesh rippling over itself. I wanted to show you how, without knowing it, you'd given your vase the shape of my mother, the way she might appear when she's alone. But it was not what you were making, you explained with a look of disapproval. And I sighed because I thought you knew that in my watching, I was making something too. Do you resist this? My eye on your craft, my impulse to change things, just when you were sure I understood. I liked it when you described to me the feeling of terracotta in your hands, how easily it yields, smooth to the touch, retaining its color and texture. I suppose we all like it when, at the end of our labor, we create what we'd intended. A potter makes a pot, a woman births a child. A poet hovers just above her shame and below her function. To write, that is all, you said. You do your part, and I will do mine. Um, the next poem is called To Hug a Maple Tree. To Hug a Maple Tree. Shout out to Pumho, who's in the group chat. It was inspired by our first encounter. So To Hug a Maple Tree. Once a man caught between my legs, soft, the weight of a, Pumo's not the man between my legs, by the way. Okay, so To Hug a Maple Tree. Once a man caught between my legs, soft, the weight of my covers over us, confessed to the rape of his mother and to his work on a white man's farm. And he became to me no different from a man in blue overalls in the backyard of my family home, rolling the hosepipe around his arm, his eyes unable to meet mine. I imagined that I let him in, through the kitchen and into my room, and the more he spoke, the more inseparable we became, from the men seated at the back of the contractor's bakkie, from the nondescript figures at the taxi rank. How easily we fall into the black mass, the dirt roads, the other. When I told you how they broke into my home and tied my mother up and lay her on the floor, what did I become to you? A weight, a sinking stone? I am distrusting of how easily you can go from one end of the world to another, half my kind, half another. They have a place for your hybridity where I'm from. They have positioned you in proximity to, but above us. And yes, I want more, but I am heavy. and I hurt to hold. In my dreams, I have my arms wrapped around a maple tree, and the dry earth has fingers, coarse around my ankles, and the sky does not shelter, and the sun, the unrelenting sun. In my dreams, there are gale force winds, but my grip is fastened, my arms around the maple. It is autumn now. We are seated across from each other, in a bar in New Hampshire. We have escaped the suffering of our kind. We have discussed some of the ways that we can remain here. You have a plan more considerable than mine, and I have a dream that suffocates. I have arms that cling. I'll read one more before we watch the film. This one's called To Hug a Maple Tree. I'm sorry, this one's called Country I'm From. We live in a rearview mirror. You can feel it as you drive by shards of glass from broken windows scattered on the roads at the traffic intersection. The cars that stop meet us behind the red light. The signpost standing in place of police officers. Caution. This land is hostile. The air is too dry. The sun scorches. The winters break the skin around the eyes. Variations of thorny succulents grow behind the fences. To write, you need only list all the ways this land has afflicted you. To survive, you must find a way to shrink enough to prevent further harm. And the beautiful must be kept inside. And the beautiful must be kept inside, or learn to wear the expression of the people whose pain is unaccounted for. The cursed stare of silent sufferers, bruised and brooding in a sickle cell system, whose wounds do not congeal but pour out like a prolonged period, bloodying the sheets, blood clots on a cotton pad, the musty stench of dead fish, the stained underwater, this life-giving pain, the strain of too much life, too much blood, too much flowing, a body that is chronically subjected, a body that betrays itself, a body loathed when dressed in clothes. Disappear me, country I'm from. Thank you.
I could listen to you for longer. If you have any more, please. Beautiful.
Do you want me to read one more?
Yeah, sure. You said you had some new work. I'm assuming the last poem was a new poem.
The last poem was older, but I could read you a kind of prose poetry, sort of
Yeah.
essayistic short
Yes,
piece,
please. Yes,
and
please.
then we can transition. Okay.
Yeah.
This one's called Aquarelle. If anybody's read The Frightened, it'll give you more context, you know? Okay, Aquarelle. He called it an instant of beauty when, at 19, he stretched his hand out over the sea and photographed the morning light split between his fingers. And the sea, like everything he's photographed since, had a milky residue, like recollection, like watercolor. He's taken pictures of the arid mountain ranges in the Himalayas, of Nepalese models in new clothing. And just behind them, the skies. Sorry, can I start again? He called it an instant of beauty when, at 19, he stretched his hand out over the sea and photographed the morning light split between his fingers. And the sea, like everything he's photographed since, had a milky residue, like recollection, like watercolor. He's taken pictures of the arid mountain ranges in the Himalayas, of Nepalese models in fine clothing, and just behind them, the sky is reflected over a clear lake in Ladakh. Then 10 years later, he'd compose a picture in Fontainebleau of two women posed as if performing a baptism, their bodies accented by a red scarf and a precise ray of light touching a thigh, a neckline, both women embraced by the light and leaning towards it. His brother, who had been working at a modeling agency, viewed his compositions and exclaimed, "You've done it." He had at that moment become to his brother, and by his exclamation, the world, what he'd recognized in himself Years prior, when he photographed his hand over the sea, he was, by his own description, among those who could make scripture of light. When asked how he became a photographer, Zabran would say that what he'd really wanted to be was an explorer, like Indiana Jones. He even considered archaeology, but quickly tired of all that hammering at dirt. He wanted the present, the stuff that sat on the surface, as well as a way to see the world from its remote and inaccessible corners. The picture he had taken of his hand had not changed his relationship to it, nor caused him to reconsider his position on arduous labor. But in its reaching, in its grasping at open air, it would give visual expression to his long-drawn obsession with passing things, his ability to capture them momentarily, without permission. Tattooed under his arm was a poem. In love with the lake, the swan longs to stay longer, but the ice covers the lake, and the swan flies with no regret. And to everything he would permit this impermanence, his home, his bank account, and perhaps most affecting of all, himself. His absence felt like a vanishing light, or what it might feel like to have met an actual person, only to realize that everyone prior to this meeting had been a hologram. It was as if life had lost its saturation and gone back to being tame, synthetic, to digitized photographs, diplomatic dinners, early nights, sobriety, a slow and uninteresting way of dying. I once used this photograph of Zabran's hand stretched out towards the sea and placed it beside a picture of myself, standing near a shoreline, as if his hands were reaching out from me. I think what I'd felt placing those pictures side by side was that those hands had framed me, shaped me, made me aware of my own composition, so that I too knew how to arrange things, how to distill substance onto a page and make and unmake things beautiful. I feel his quiet hand on everything good. But if he could see me now, the yellow tint in my eyes, my parched lips, the fine lines that gather when I smile, or to hear of how the years have aged me, of the violence I've momentarily escaped but still finds me replaying the image of a child's hand reaching for a ball in a swimming pool, falling into it, drowning, a picture of a toddler's body floating in the water that needs these substances to erase. Perhaps his hands reach out to hold her, save her, but I lie. Sabran taught me how to take, how to surrender, not to give. He's saving the photograph of his hand for the cover of his upcoming book. I can already see it on display, with pictures printed on grainy Polish paper, developed from films recovered from the Red Army stocks, and negatives used by spy planes to take pictures from an altitude of 10,000 meters. The only things he describes in details are his photographs and the analog process, how to manually adjust the aperture. He's excited about dark rooms and believes it is the only place one comes to understand light. He has developed countless contact sheets and a few prints and is mastering the technique of platinum emulsion and photogravure. He has more to say about this in a rare interview. Upon reading it, I am again reminded of his capacity to seduce, his tendency to convert an audience, subdue his listeners. He has more to say about the dark room than he has to say about his family. He only once mentions his eldest daughter, who has begun to take photographs as well. And I am consoled that he has not yet surrendered to convention, that nothing has successfully kept his hand from reaching. When I asked to see the photograph of his hand stretched out over the sea, the one he'd asked me to delete and gone to great measures trying to raise it from public record. I recall that when he wants to, he answers. When he is unsure, he does not. I remind myself, browsing through the thin white figures in his portraiture, that he'd made it his life to work, that he'd made it his life's work to kill his intention, to live, as he often said, in the here and now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lethu. Oh, that was beautiful. So many layers to your work. Thank you so much. You can take a deep breath now. That was beautiful. Yeah, it's just wonderful to hear a poet read their work, and yeah, there's this kind of haunting lyricism to your writing, which really translates in the way you read. That is a beautiful gift.